Hello Ride On people, it's 7 o'clock, so my clock tells me, and it's about 65 degrees outside, which isn't bad for late September I guess, and temperatures are going to get up to about 85 today. Just about to ride off to breakfast to meet up with Jerry on his GS adventure, and we can have a little ride up to Bell Mountain in Hiawassee, which I think is in Cherokee County, and apparently there's an absolute stunning view from the top of that mountain. So gonna meet up for breakfast, have a ride up there, maybe shoot some footage, and we'll certainly take some photos and panoramic shots and a little bit of video at the top of the mountain, so stay with us. So we made it to Bell Mountain and parked the bikes up, and of course the first thing to greet us was a load of rocks covered in graffiti, which is I guess the disease of the youth of today, when we have political leaders around the world not believing in environmental issues, and children growing up thinking the world owes them a living and everything is handed to them on a plate and disposable. I guess it should have come as no surprise, but it was sad to see all that graffiti over such beauty. We first read the plaque that's up there regarding Bell Mountain County Park and historical site, and the Hal Herring Overlook Ordinance, and that made interesting reading. And although it was tricky getting up the hill, which was incredibly steep to get to the park, there was like 4x4s in kind of like low ratio gears to get up the thing. It's much steeper than it looks on video. It was well worth it because we were presented with such a stunning view. I mean, quite possibly the best view I've seen in Georgia, period. The real panoramic view was probably, I don't know, maybe 70 miles. Really stunning. It was a lovely day for it, actually. Very clear skies, and we could probably see, I'm guessing, probably tips of Tennessee and the Carolinas as well. And it wasn't too busy up there, which was nice because it's kind of single track on the way up there, and it was just absolutely incredible view, well worth the 100 mile or so we rode to get there. Jerry thought it was stunning, and I certainly did as well. Well worth a visit, and it's a place to certainly come back to someday, as it's a nice ride up there. The views are stunning. The view from up here is absolutely stunning. Bell Mountain, Hiawassee. So we continued down from the mountain, and the gradient is incredibly steep. You may not notice it from the video, but look at the people's feet walking up this hill. You can just see what kind of angle they're at. They're like mountain goats trying to get up this place, and it's kind of single track. There was lots of fallen trees and debris and some wet leaves and that kind of stuff. We came to hairpins and had to stop with difficult cambers. It's very difficult on a tall bike like the GS Adventure. Let some slower riders by, etc. But we continued. It's actually a pleasant ride, but quite challenging, and much more challenging than it looks on video. As I say, it's very steep, very tight corners, a single track with no runoff, and with long travel tool suspension, you've got to kind of watch yourself coming down here, and watch for oncoming traffic, because you can easily kind of run off the edge of the road and put your foot down and realise that there's kind of nothing there. So it's a little bit challenging, but fortunately it was dry weather and good light conditions. So we continued on to our lunchtime stop, and we rode around the Chattooga Lake, which was really quite stunning, till we got to Brasstown Valley Resort and Spa, which was a lovely spot for lunch. This is part of their private grounds that we're entering here, and it's a beautiful golf golf resort basically in Spa, and we parked up the bikes, secured them, and then we walked up to the entrance, and it was very nice inside, very well equipped, and very good staff. We had a great lunch there, and we pretty much had the place to ourselves. There was just a few visitors there, but it was a lovely place to sit out on the deck and taking the ambiance and taking the scenic views of the golf course, which was very nice. And myself and Jerry had a really nice lunch there, and we had a long chat about the new Harleys, in actual fact. So we're at a country club in Young Harris having lunch. An absolutely beautiful place, and we have a place absolutely to ourselves. And this week, no quizzes or anything, but for the banter section, I'd like to talk about last weekend. So last weekend I put out quite a number of videos, one on the Nuviz heads-up display unit, which I didn't get on with too well, one on the K1600B test ride, the bagger, which was pretty excellent, and then one on the new Fat Bob and new Fat Boy Softail Harleys, and then another one on the British car and motorcycle fair. So on the Sunday, that was all kind of Saturday, very busy, but on the Sunday Jerry and I went to our local friendly Harley Davidson dealership, Killer Creek, and we wanted to ride the new Softails, and disappointingly they didn't have them. We were told that the second batch of Softails due to go to all dealers they've been stopped for some unknown reason. Possibly there's a slight problem and there's a kind of recall on them, so we're not really sure what's happening with those. So we've been told there's a recall on those bikes, and we're not really sure what's happening with the second batch, but it stopped the bikes arriving, and the long short was we weren't able to ride them. All we were able to ride were either the old 103s or a couple of the new Milwaukee 48s, but only in the touring one. So I took Jerry along because Jerry is a bit of a Harley phobe, and I wanted him to actually have his prejudices tested to see whether he felt the same after riding them or not riding them, after riding them, whether he felt the same or not the same. Yeah, all good, thank you. Lots of editing to do that. Right. Lots of editing to do that. And so we're having to edit this a bit because it suddenly got a bit busy in here, but so we're going to chat with Jerry now. So Jerry rode 4 or 5 Harleys last weekend. I think the first bike you rode was the Softail Deluxe, was it? Yeah. Black one, and then you rode the new Milwaukee 8 Street Glide. For comparison, both the engine and the switch from the Softails to the Tourers, and then I think you rode the Dyna Fat Bob, and then the Roadster Sportster. Was there another one you rode?
Maybe not.
4.
They all seem similar.
So, what were your very first? So the first bike you rode was the 103 Softail Deluxe. What was your very first impression of the bike in terms of its weight and the clutch and the gearbox?
It seemed
engine.
A little clunky. The shifter was hard to get used to because it has a front and the back. I just use the front all the time.
Right.
Ground clearance. I scraped whatever I scraped on the bottom on
running
the first turn I took. So I don't lean a lot, and I didn't lean much, but it started scraping. So that was interesting. I think all of them to some extent scraped. So then I just tried to see if I could get them all to scrape, which I did. And they just, I can see where they're very different. There's a pulse running through your body that you may or may not like. I prefer not to have it. It reminds me when I had my first little go-kart when I was 14. It was, kind of rattly and clunky, and you stepped on it, and it just kind of...
Well, I guess there's a difference between character and faults.
That's right. Well, I could definitely see
a lot of people class, some faults as character if they're passionate about a brand.
Right.
And there's no such thing as a perfect bike.
No.
But there's certain things that are just not right, really, about the current range of Harleys. That's for sure.
No, I think the longer I rode it, the more I got used to its character. Don't know if I'd like to ride it across country or 300 or 400 miles in a day.
So what would you say the worst features were, just generically speaking? Was it ground clearance? Was it gearbox? Was it brakes?
I guess you could get used to the ground clearance thing. It was just the feel, and it would get up and go when you floored it. Every bike seemed to have a different gear shift position. On the smaller ones, I had to constantly look over to see where the gear was.
That's one thing they seem to have improved on this next year, 2018.
Some were up high, some were low, some were over here, some
the
were over
2018
there.
Softails, the brake and gear lever, rear gear lever, brake pedal rather, are in more of a conventional position compared with other manufacturers. In previous years, it's been like, why the hell would you put the lever 3 inches above your foot? It just makes no sense whatsoever. So, yeah. What do you think the best feature is of the best Harley you rode?
Probably just that feel, that vibration, if you will. And I'm sure these run smoother than earlier generations, but it's
hard to believe. But
it just I don't know. It has that,
I think Harley's very much about look, sound, and feel. So if you like a loud, deep rumble, then you fit aftermarket pipes, and you've got that. And if you like the look of it, because chrome sells to well, mainly to those that don't ride. Actually, Harley's the most impressive to those people that don't ride because they look pretty, and also it's the feeling, and it is hard to replicate the feeling of the Harley with that 45-degree V-twin. It's got a certain rumble. It kind of feels like kind of galloping horse, and a bit like the Boxer does. In actual fact, that feels kind of like a cantering horse, but in a different way, totally different way, being an opposed twin to the V-twin. But
I wouldn't recommend that they get rid of it, because that was
the
thing that I noticed about it. And I'm more prone to riding a BMW.
Yeah.
So that's what I like.
The Triumph a few years ago did a lot of 4-cylinder bikes, and they got a management consultancy, and they said, well, you're known traditionally, in the 60s, 70s for doing parallel twins, and you're known now for doing, parallel transverse threes, triples. So why diverse and do something that you're not known for? And they focus very jealously on those two, and that's done very well for them. And the same with Harley, when they've gone off at a tangent to do something a bit off the wall, like the V-Rod, it's not sold to the faithful, so, which is a shame really, because the V-Rod's probably the most reliable engine they've made in recent years. We both got friends, particularly with the 110 motor, that they just seem to self-destruct or lose oil on a regular basis, which is more like a 1960s Triumph than something out of 2017.
Yeah, that's probably another thing I wouldn't like about them, because like you say, our friends are having issues.
Yeah, I think I was a little bit spoilt actually, because I rode the Milwaukee 48s when they came out, and I thought, wow, it's a big improvement. Not so much in terms of power. On paper, it's like another 10 horsepower, another 10 torques or something, and I couldn't really feel that at the seat of the pants, but it felt much more refined actually than the old bikes. And I thought, actually, that's a really good job. But when I rode them on Sunday, I didn't really enjoy it that much, I have to admit. And I think the fact is that I rode the K16B the day before, and I was really spoilt by that, because wow, is that thing smooth, and is that thing efficient, and everything on it just works. It's dripping with technology because it's got like, you know, the hill start control, it's got reverse gear, it's got special loops to direct cool air onto the rider, it's got powered screen, it's got cruise control, you know, that 6-cylinder engine is a masterpiece. And I think that kind of riding out on the Saturday and then suddenly climbing on the Harley the next day, it made the Harley feel like 30 years old, to be honest. So that was very, very difficult. And, you know, to those that are, you know, Harley fanboys out there, the thing I would remind you is I've owned 3 Harleys, and you know, I know what it's like to actually own and live with them. And I've had a twin cam 88, a 96, a 103. I've ridden lots of the 103s, lots of the 48s now, and I've ridden earlier stuff as well, like shovels and all the rest of it stuff. I get Harleys, and I've been a Harley owner, but it still felt 30 years old compared with that new BMW. It's really, really sensational. So that was how the weekend left me feeling. And
but wait,
just
I have a question.
Yeah.
You there was a bike that you rode there that you had particularly impressed you, and it had 3 wheels. Why don't
The trike guide.
why don't you
I've never
tell me about that?
I've never ridden a trike before, and I had a go on the Tri-Glide trike. And actually, it was funny, I've been riding like 40 years or something, and I've never ridden a bike with reverse gear, and suddenly I rode 2 bikes in 2 days with reverse gear. K1600B, which had a brilliant reverse gear. It's actually pretty fast, and it's very smooth and very easy and very controlled. And then the Tri-Glide, which was kind of okay. It was a bit antiquated compared with the BMW, a bit jerky, but it did the job. And reversing was pretty fine, and that's because when you reverse a trike, you're effectively going forwards with 2 wheels because you're going backwards. As soon as you want to go forwards, wow, I've never been so scared in all my life. I never got the bike out of second gear. I really felt like it was going to high-side me. Now, the guy that was leading the ride out, he was throwing his around like Billy-O. He was going from the yellow line to the curve all the time. We're not sure whether it was voluntary or not, but I guess the stability control must work, but scared the bejesus out of me. I didn't like the push-pull feeling after riding the bike for 40 years, and if ever I get in a position whereby I'm not strong enough to hold up a bike anymore, I'll be choosing a trike that has 2 wheels at the front, like a Spider, or you know, maybe a slingshot car bike hybrid, or you know, just something that is 2-wheel driven at the front for stability. So yeah, I didn't enjoy that. So in summary, for me, I'd like to try the 2018 Softail Fat Bob, because I know it's a huge improvement and it might be a good second bike one day. But at present, the touring Harleys, there's no cat and hell's chance of me trading my GSA for one of those at present. And when the time comes to trade the GSA, I'll probably buy another one, or that K1600B. That is really quite a special bike. So in summary for you, I guess you're not going to be buying a Harley anytime soon either.
Probably not. You made me ride it. I had an unblemished record before last weekend of never having ridden a Harley, and you know, that's not fair to the brand, I don't think, and to everybody that I know that rides them. So I mean, I have to experience it. I have
To appreciate, you have to experience.
Yeah. So I see what they're talking about.
You speak from a position of experience.
I'm somewhat educated, although very briefly. So,
Exactly.
yeah. But it was good of the dealership. They were a good dealership. They followed up, you know, with a phone call, and I told them I ride, you know, BMWs now, and they
went, oh, no.
they kind of
lost
interest in me.
We don't have too many people ride GSAs that end
I
up
could see
wanting
going
to
from a
trade.
Harley to a BMW, but I can't see going from a BMW to a Harley. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe, I know people that have both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of
For me, no.
get you there. Absolutely. I think it's also a testament to the fact that a couple of guys we ride with, who ride Harleys, with zero pressure from us, think their next bike's going to be a GSA, or it's going to be a GS at least.
Yeah.
And that's kind of says it all, I think. apart from Eric, who is a glutton for punishment, who likes having his bikes rebuilt every 5 minutes, and will probably continue to buy bikes that fall apart, mainly because he's unable to keep the throttle below 12,000 RPM everywhere.
It's hard for him.
Yeah.
But it's the people there on the demo ride, I could tell the Harley guys, I mean, they're heart and soul, and you know, you're not going to change that. You know? I mean, and I wouldn't want them to. I mean, I think, you know, that's the way it is for them, and you know, we all ride together and have a good time, right? That's the main thing.
Absolutely. So we had a lovely lunch there. Had a delicious cheeseburger, in actual fact, with some fruit, and Jerry had a nice meal. He enjoyed it as well. But after that, it was time to move on, and we rode down to Blood Mountain, a favourite spot for us to drop off at, and bought a couple of t-shirts at the touristy shop there. Then we headed on down to Dahlonega and got a cup of coffee there. Dahlonega is basically where the gold rush started, and they had a number of bluegrass bands and small and large in the main square there, playing different types of kind of bluegrass music. And here's just a tiny snippet of one of the bands which were fun to watch. So on the way home, I was getting a little bit nervous because with every mile remaining on my tank range was about the distance required to get myself home, and there was a little bit of freeway work involved, and I was reluctant to get off the freeway and actually fill up, but I didn't know how accurate the range was, range indicator on the GSA would be. But being Germanic, I figured it'd probably be pretty accurate, and I can tell you that by the time I filled up, I had just 4 miles remaining shown on the clocks, and had not run out of fuel, thankfully. So I trust that in future that I can run down to practically zero, or without having to refuel. Although typically I do refuel when I've got 50 miles or so to go when the low warning light comes on, which is still after 300 miles on the GS Adventure. It's such a nice range. So I got home safe and sound, and I can see that my Tonkinese Jasper had a very relaxing day, more relaxing than myself, but I wonder who had the most fun. I think it must have been me and Jerry. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and share and subscribe, of course. And lastly, but not least, ride often, ride carefully, ride on.